Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. We are going to be talking about a lot of things, as is our habit. But the first sort of inroad, I'll set it up saying that OpenAI just signed a $10 billion contract with Broadcom in order to build inference chips. And an inference chip is like a TPU, a tensor processing unit that Google has, but Google didn't figure out the transformers, which is all about training, I believe. And then so they've done a $10 billion deal. And then related to that, OpenAI did an Oracle deal with $60 billion over the next few years or something like that, which I also want to go into because I don't think either OpenAI or Oracle has that money to do that deal. So I would like to do an analysis on that. Where do you want to go first, Broadcom or Oracle?
I know a lot more about Oracle and the deal with OpenAI plus its earnings have I'm in the wrong period of time, have made, the headlines were that Larry Ellison briefly became the richest guy in the world. And that was a result of their very good earnings plus the OpenAI announcement. Their stock 35% in one day. And you can see it when you look at the stock chart because there's like this straight up thing on the last day. The Broadcom, you mentioned the $10 billion deal that Broadcom did. I went and looked at their stock and it went up 7.5%. So it's like relative to the businesses, something big changed about Oracle. And the thing with, that was a nice to have, right? That Broadcom did this deal. Oracle's bouncing around just under 4 trillion and Broadcom's bouncing around under 2. And it's like all a relative thing. Broadcom's role in the semiconductor business is something I'm not as familiar with. You pointed out to me that they started out really in the cable infrastructure doing, originally networking and then communications, semiconductors for cable companies and infrastructure. And then I kind of lost track of them after that. And so I'm not sure what they've been doing, although what they've been doing has been valuable because they've never really taken a big hit, except they took a big hit earlier this year. Don't know why, but it was go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to, how does a company do a deal for $60 billion? So the earnings piece was really interesting because I didn't know about that's also part of it. But how do two companies like this, one, a giant company that serves the entire US government and is really important for cloud computing, and another company who's an upstart who's got several competitors who are pretty good, but is clearly in the lead in terms of adoption in both the enterprise and the consumer. How do they get a deal worth $60 billion when it's all made up? It seems all made up, right? Like,
that's the essence of business. What are you willing to make up? And how much do people believe? Clearly, as a result of this deal, people believe this is going to be something true. I try to think of the equivalents. Do you remember when people were all jazzed about OpenAI needing to raise $1 trillion?
Yeah.
A year or so, something like that. And Sam Altman kind of backed off of that, and they didn't talk about it very much. But I get the sense that they actually have been planning on it all along. So they did this, Oracle, OpenAI, and I can't remember who the third party was, building, maybe SoftBank, building this thing in Texas. It's like a super data center. I'll remember the name in a minute. Stargate. And Oracle's in that one. And OpenAI, they're both in that. And so then Oracle and OpenAI announced this deal for $60 billion. And they're basically just guessing how much it'll cost. And in the case of both of them, I'm going to go ask here, but how much cash does Oracle have? see if I typed that correctly. 11 billion in cash as of late May. Who knows how much OpenAI has in the bank at any one time, because they seem to be continually raising more money. So they're both big enough and valuable enough that people would go, yeah, this is feasible.
So the question's coming to my mind right now, and I did an initial question which didn't give me the answer, which is about so 60 billion for some time period, all made up. What is not made up? What has been committed so far? That's a good question. What has been committed?
So,
yeah,
you do it, I do it.
Designed to impress, but all of it's a solid commitment. So they have a framework agreement, signed a multi-year framework contract that set headline figures. This is a capacity reservation agreement. Oracle commits to build and reserve 4.1 gigawatts. I did look at that. That's 2 Hoover dams. That's the size of 2 Hoover dams, 4.1 megawatts. There's minimum commitments. Reported numbers, 30 billion annually, are presented as if they are firm minimums, but analysts suspect that's not the case. These kind of deals almost always contain minimum purchase obligations. So it's not clear is the answer to that question.
So I'm looking at this, and when you look at this stuff, September 12th, 2025, so they're talking about a 300 billion deal. Big OpenAI Oracle shocked the markets with a surprise 300 billion 5-year agreement. Stop this. So it's OpenAI buying compute from Oracle, which means Oracle has to put together the actual physical, which is
the energy. So Oracle needs to get the energy, the 4.5 megawatts, and they're not building it all at once. They're scale deployments. Nuclear power is going to maybe fit into this, but the timeline for nuclear power just takes too long to fit into this, the 2029 kind of, 300 billion, 2029. Man, it's so crazy. So what happens?
50 billion a year, that's where you got the number. It's a 60 billion a year for 5 years, so it's 300 billion.
Okay, got it. So it's 60 billion this year. We can assume, or sorry, no, it's 60. No. Wow. Okay.
So OpenAI has said it is at 10 billion in annual recurring revenue.
Yeah.
From 5.5. I just had this little thing going off in my head about what is this revenue? Who the hell is spending $10 billion on OpenAI stuff? And if it's people that are $20 subscriptions, there's it's very hard to get the crosshatch between how many of those are paying $20 and how many are free versus 200. But it doesn't sound like 10 billion.
Yeah.
So money from enterprises, and yet everybody's debating whether it's got any value for enterprises. And so it's like this. I hope it's not funny money, and this all comes crashing down at some point.
Well, that's my big question, because it's so let me back this up a bit, and actually forgot to ask you something, which I'll ask you afterwards, related to this, which is it's all funny money. It's trillions. In 2008, I think it was something like 4.5 trillion was done in quantitative easing, and then quantitative easing, which means the Fed sells made up money to the banks, and the banks distribute that out into the economy.
I can derail you here. All money
okay.
All money is made.
Yes, all money's made up, but it's really made up.
Representation of some kind of value, that Adam Smith figured out we all agree on collectively. And, it goes up and down.
Yeah.
And so money is itself a concept. So when you go, it's all made up, you're going like, yeah, of course it is, because everything is all made up. And that's why they have the SEC, to make sure that you're not making up what's happened. At least you're not making up what's happened. You're making up what's going on in the future, but you're making up, so Oracle famously did start making up numbers. And after it went public, this is
Oh,
around
great.
2000, around 2000, you can look it up.
Yeah.
But they had to restate their revenue. Restate their revenue means they were making it up and they had to actually fix it. And that was a key learning for Larry Ellison, which is good that he got it early on because he hasn't made up anything since. So he's got a lot of credibility, right? And he's got billions of dollars. And with his son, he's off doing this thing with Paramount and Warner Brothers,
which we should also talk about.
Yeah.
So
he basically viewed as a guy that, like, you know, he's not like Trump. He's not like kind of randomly going around and stirring things up. He's very intentionally doing things. So he has a lot of credibility. So making stuff up really is a function of how much credibility you have. It all comes back.
So is it in any way related to gold? Do you buy that before 1971, was your father a believer in the fact that gold is the value by which money is made real?
Well, technically, I don't know what my father's point of view was because he was not great on economics. But
interesting.
He understood politics, and obviously politics and economics were deeply entwined. But you know, different people understand different things.
Yeah, interesting.
The standard was that every dollar of value that the U.S. government had an equivalent in gold sitting in stocks. And so people go like, yeah, I don't need to trust the dollar because I trust gold. And gold is, you know, a limited resource that, you know, reflects real value, hard value. You can hold it. And we got off the gold standard, and I can't remember exactly when it happened.
1971. 1933 is when FDR went after U.S. citizens' gold in our own version of the Argentine Corralito. And in 1971 is when when the French sent a bunch of gunboats over to collect their gold. Nixon's like, nope, can't have it. We're removing the ability for foreign countries to redeem their gold for U.S. dollars.
I'll be a little different from getting off the gold standard, whatever. Yeah. I mean, since then we have not been tied to gold, and gold I think has gone up to like $1,400.
Yeah.
Ounce.
No, 3,000. It's 3,000. I'm pretty sure it's 3,000.
So obviously, holding gold is generally accepted a way of protecting your money when you're worried about losing it, which is, you know, another issue. You know, I'm sitting there worrying about, and other people are worrying about, well, look, if I have it in a bank, is it safe? Right? So the bank's going to get, well, you know, we already went through that and kind of fixed up the system for the banks, but do you trust them? Like JP Morgan is accused of being the financier for Jeffrey Epstein and supporting all of his nasty habits. Does that change your opinion of JP Morgan? They say they fixed the problem. But I mean, there's a lot, you know, this is random stuff, but, you know, do you trust people to know what they're doing? And, you know, for me, actually, part of it is I'm not sure if Trump and his people know what they're doing. They're challenging everything to such a degree that I'm not sure that we're going to end up feeling trusting in our own government.
I've lost a lot of my trust over, particularly on that Epstein piece, because I went in and I found out the details far more than I ever wanted to know about Epstein. I now know. And it's not good, but we don't need to go into that. Gold, what's that?
If we go into that, we're gonna sit here crying into our soup and everybody.
Yeah. About the state of the world. State of the world is so interesting at the moment. But let's focus this on, because I'm optimistic. And I think I probably get this from you as well, because I think you're generally pretty optimistic as well. The rest of the world is very confused at the moment. And actually, like, let's take this to this AI Whispers high signal post that I just wrote, and the physical AI video that you sent me, which was a great video from a researcher, really funny, I think Taiwanese researcher, maybe he's Chinese, from NVIDIA, who basically laid out how are they doing robotic reinforcement learning through simulations, where they've got the LLMs designing 3D models, which are then training the robots. And we're now entering like crazy into this world. Why I mentioned China and the US is that China doesn't care whether they have the latest and the greatest models. As they've done traditionally, all they do is they take the innovation from the United States. The United States is a cutting edge. Take it, spread it out, own the supply chains. Doesn't matter. United States owns the entire financial infrastructure with this dollar that we've been talking about, so it clearly relates to that. So, and this is really wrapped up with the Oracle thing, because why I mentioned the gold is because, and the funny money, it's all made up, is that it's all made up. The money's inflating if we compare it to gold and if we compare it to Bitcoin. So the US dollar is inflating rapidly. I'm here in Argentina. Very similar situation happened. Oracle's throwing these large numbers around about billions and billions of dollars, which they may or may not have. And he has a history of doing that. ChatGPT also is a guy who does that. OpenAI, Sam Altman is also a guy who seems to make things up pretty vociferously. So China and the United States, what's your growing take on US versus China? And we did discuss this in a previous episode, maybe in the 10th episode, somewhere around there, where you actually went to China in 1997. And then a few years later, they developed the Great Firewall, which actually was just breached. There's an important news piece that there was a leak on the Great Firewall, how it actually works. But yeah, from then until now, what's your take on China?
Good Lord. We just switched from semiconductors to China.
Yeah.
God, that's a tough one. China has obviously made remarkable progress as a country over the last 30 years. And I attribute that to essentially one guy doing a good job figuring out what to do, which is Xi Jinping, figuring out how to get them to be good at making stuff. And creating economic boom in China. The economy is beginning to fray there, and I just read a really interesting piece about that, which I won't go to because I can't remember it well enough. But basically, the economy is fraying there. That they're trying to maintain such control over the economy that they're beginning to lose control because you really can't. Interesting. History of economies is you can't really control them. That's the whole Adam Smith thing. You don't try to control it. You go with the flow. But it is generating, at least in the military domain, significant response from the U.S. And one thing Trump's done, which give him credit for whatever, is he has stimulated the entrepreneurial venture capital community to respond to the need for a new set of weaponry and theories about defense and offense. And so there are literally hundreds of companies now applying for money from the Golden Dome project, which I think is $150 billion over the next few years. And if you believe in entrepreneurship and capitalist societies, you have to believe that this could be messy, but we're going to end up with a pretty smart thing. Now, a lot of the things that we're going to end up with, that China's already done. So, the big parade they had recently, they were showing off stuff that we didn't know they had, or maybe the CIA they did.
Whoa!
Us publicly didn't know, and so they're showing off drones, undersea drones, missiles, stuff that not previously been in our picture of their inventory. And part of the speculation about these may just be like dumb models. They may not actually work, but interesting, because no one's seen them in action. And anyway, so we're in this competition with China where a lot of people are worried that we've lost it already, and some people are like enthusiastic about fixing our problem. And China's been doing well now for like 30 years, and usually when you do well for a long time, the cycle comes back, and so I think it's matched. I mean, we're in a new Cold War, which is, we were terrified back in the 50s that somebody was going to let off an atomic bomb, and the only reason nobody did is because we were staring at each other, going like, "I don't want to be first." And so the open question is, do we believe that China is willing to be first and suffer the consequences, or maybe even Trump. So that's the essence of a Cold War. It's like nobody's shooting at each other yet, and the likely first thing would be to release a huge destructive force of nuclear weapons.
Well, it was, and it's not only nuclear now, because now the chessboard is changing, and we can go into some spicy things related to drones, because about 2 months ago, the Ukrainians sneaked in a shipping container into Russian territory. I think they got it to Archangel, and they let it out, all the drones, and it was a big thing. Destroyed a lot of nuclear bombers. Somehow it was memory hold. It was only like 24-hour news cycle. Very curious why that so quickly left. But Israel did the same thing in Iran recently. They snuck drone parts through their intelligence networks inside of Iran, and then started, taking out people in Iran from within the territory. And so Israel's definitely got some drone things. Ukraine probably has some real institutional knowledge.
Drones, I mean, you're putting too much on drones here. They physically moved the containers in Ukraine through a Russian border, and then had the piece parts inside to assemble and launch them. The Israelis did something different, which is they targeted individuals. So they had what are called human vets on the ground who went and killed people, and they did a very successful job of it. It wasn't just missiles raining down on these people. So what it was like in the bunker 100 feet underground, where the prime minister, whoever it is, that reports to is anyway, I'm a little bit fuzzy here, but Khomeini, the guy who reports to Khomeini, who is the visible, was sitting there with the entire government, and these bombs were running down on them, but they didn't all the way down to where they were. So that must have been kind of scary.
I did not know that. Thank you for fact checking me on the fact that it was individual targeted. That gets into this whole other thing, which is the nature of war shifting, enemy non-combatants, the nation state and U.S. citizens of nation states are now targets. They've always been targets. You have predator drones going and targeting one person, blowing up one thing, but it's getting much more fine-tuned to the ability to take out people specifically. And that very good juxtaposition against Ukraine going after Russian bombers, and Israelis going after Iranian heads of state and all sorts of other things. Wow, interesting. So changing chessboard, drones are playing a thing, but then also the other thing is biological warfare. That's gonna be an interesting. Nothing.
Not that you can't, but it's a kind of a Pandora's box, and a lot of people think that COVID started in a lab in China because they were researching biological weapons. We do it; they do it. I think anybody really wants to unleash that, because it's really, if there's any honor in war, it's
it's gone.
That you shouldn't just be killing people randomly, which the Israelis are accused of. It's referred to as genocide in Gaza, because they're trying to find Hamas, but Hamas is in the middle of the population, and they don't seem to care about killing off the population. Anyways, I'm not sure exactly where we are. It's like
I know where we are. I mean, we can because. No, let's go back to history, because there's a really important thing that happened in World War I, where before that honor was considered, gentlemen go to war, and when gentlemen go to war, it's not slaughter. It's then after World War I, it turned into slaughter, and then World War II, civilian populations started to become targets by all parties. But we'll move back into the optimism from there. So let's go into Broadcom. Broadcom in the 1990s. We're going to go right into technical details. So if our listeners don't want to do that, that's where we're going. So 1990s, networks of computers enabling kids like me to play video games in LAN parties. What is a LAN party? Local area network. What is a local area network?
So that's exactly what it says. It's a network of computers in a local location. And that was the problem with PCs when they went into companies is they were, they had their own thing, and the only way you could exchange data was pull the floppy disk out and hand it to somebody. So Bob Metcalfe came up with this thing called Ethernet. And so companies, there were other ways to do it, but so it wasn't clear how you would connect all these complete computers together. So the first thing was companies would like connect them together in a department, or in a building. And then they go like, well, now it's not connected, to the other buildings or the other departments. And so it was a kind of long and painful process of establishing standards and then getting everybody to adhere to them that eventually companies did succeed in networking the whole company at a pretty high cost until the internet became feasible. Right? And so the internet showed up and as a commercial thing in '94, been around before that, but and between '94 and '99, everybody got connected. Right? We all got websites and learned how to get our computers online, and companies actually were kind of late to that because they already built their local area networks. And that was when the arrival of software as a service, SaaS, showed up, where you could offer software residing on the internet to companies, and it could be accessible to everybody in the company through the internet. So this has been a progression. I mean, this is what all we talk about of how these piece parts came together. First, the computers became personal, and then they got hooked together in companies on local area networks, and the internet showed up, and that started connecting the local area networks to each other and to the world. And the internet got faster and faster as the more fiber was put out. Now satellite networking. So I mean, this whole progression to this world that we live in now, where you're I don't even know how far away you are, 3,000 miles down in Argentina, and I'm up here in the U.S., and we're having a high-speed, high-quality conversation about whatever the hell we're talking about, and the technology behind this is amazing. And this is just the beginning of something bigger too, because we're all jazzed about AI. But
and I want to talk about the standards and the protocols. What is the LAN of the world we're entering in Broadcom? Now I see why Broadcom kind of got a foothold in the semiconductor industry, and now there's a big sort of gap of what happened when they were enabling my LAN party, and what happened later with AI and how they're coming back. But I want to go back to that LAN party because I just got the epiphany from you, which is I needed to go to my friend's house because Broadcom didn't have the ability to give me great long distance networks. I needed to go establish a local network with my friends in order to play high speed video games. When did that shift? When could I play video games on my own without having to go somewhere else to be physically close to them?
Well, it began with the internet, console business used to be the video game business. Now it's a piece of it, but and the shift happened when they start to play with each other through the internet, through the network, the wide area network, the local area network, and the wide area LAN and WAN. There's two ideas there, and when the internet became an effective wide area network. And a lot of it, so this gets all munged together, but I mean, it started on the internet. You could start playing games on the internet, and so the kind of games you played changed as that happened. So the first thing was PCs on the internet, right? PC games, much bigger than the Mac ever got, and then the mobile phone showed up. And at first people were going like, oh, well, you could probably play games, but they'd be really simple. But then it became huge about the same time that Facebook figured it out. And games and apps and, all that kind of stuff. So, there's never a dividing line because there's always multiple things happening up and down the stack.
So brilliant that you bring up that consoles used to be the video game industry themselves, because guess who are we talking to next Sunday? We're going to be talking to the Bushnells. I believe Nolan Bushnell is the key figure. Can you explain more about Atari, specifically what year and why it's important and what they did? Because I think that was even before I was born.
Yeah. You were born in 85, and Nolan Bushnell started Atari in the 70s. And as that video you showed, originally he started putting games into bars because all of the people would be there and wanting to have fun. So it's kind of where Pong came from. And I think it was Pong, yeah. But this is, again, there's all the same stuff going on everywhere, but there was a company called Infocom, which did online games, which you'd have to get into through a modem that were text-based. You'd issue commands, and you'd be you'd have to imagine what you were doing. So that was the thing that was going on at the same time as the consoles. The consoles originally were standalone, right? That you'd have to plug them into some kind of screen because there was no way to connect them. And so kind of the first idea was, well, let's have 4 joysticks, and you have 4 people sitting around a console playing the same game. Didn't really go anywhere because that's pretty complicated, but you had games on CompuServe and AOL before the internet became its own thing.
Atari.
Right, Atari. So Atari designed a machine that had what they call them, cartridge. So you plug the cartridge in, and the cartridge would be the game, right? So the game was manufactured on a cartridge, in a semiconductor. It's not. It's a. I can't remember the term, but anyway, they'd embedded it, and they'd develop it, test it, and then ship boxes out to retail stores, and you'd go buy them. And that was the model that Atari started. And then Commodore got into that, and then eventually, like the big companies like Nintendo, which had done card games before, when it first started, actually, that's a whole nother topic. And then Sony did the PlayStation, and and Microsoft did the Xbox. That's a pretty long period of time that developed. But the consoles had the performance to play games. You could actually just barely keep up with the game. Now, when you look at a video game, whether it's on the internet or no consoles left anymore, but or you download it, it's the reality, the amount of data that's being processed by a regular computer now. So the consoles, the existing consoles, Nintendo, the PlayStation, the Nintendo Switch, it's introduced the Switch 2, the PlayStation, which I think is announced but not delivered, a new one, and then Xbox. Those are the 3 big, game machines. So the game machines, but it's not about cartridges anymore.
So
anyway, mobile phones. Well, I'm not sure where we got it there.
Well, so the business of games. What questions should we be asking Nolan? Go for it.
Well, Nolan, the interesting part is that it's not just Nolan Bushnell, but his son Brent.
Yeah,
and started a company which we viewed at some point as competitive to Meow Wolf, which was a place that you go. And I'm struggling to remember the name of it, but the second something.
3-bit circus, 2-bit circus.
2-bit circus, that's it. And so he built that, and like Meow Wolf, he did it right in the middle of the pandemic, so he had to deal with nobody could go for a while. And it's evolved, and I think it's functioning, but it's only one thing in a way. I think we can talk about this, but Nolan's what I was just talking about, and Brent's what happened afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Really need games, or do you want to be immersed in fantasy worlds? And his was all built around pinball type games, arcade type games.
So let's talk about, because this is early stuff. Because we've talked that your career started really in the early 1970s, and then when did you and Nolan meet for the first time?
Late 70s. I graduated from college in 75, so it was after that.
Mm.
And then I spent some time thinking that I'd be a business journalist, but then I got into the computer business, and that's when I started to meet people, and that was in 1979. So Atari was already rolling. Steve Jobs had already been an intern at Atari, and then you guys met after you started to write about. Yeah.
Like how did you end up writing about games when you were focused on early PCs?
I met Nolan, I think, when he started Chuck E. Cheese, which is...
Jeez. He started Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah. He founded Atari, he founded Chuck E. Cheese. He's an inveterate starter of companies. Do you remember Chuck E. Cheese?
Of course I remember. That's so crazy. Yeah. I didn't know. I think I have a nightmare about one. One of my nightmares involves Chuck E. Cheese. There's nothing about Nolan Bushnell or anything. I'm sure that was just a random thing about childhood. But yeah, Chuck E. Cheese is like a formative organization from my childhood.
Yeah, and there was one in Redwood City that we went to. So, and he, that expanded, and he had I don't know, you'd have to look it up, but probably hundreds of Chuck E. Cheeses, and the company collapsed. So there are still some around, and he doesn't have an interest in it. But it sort of failed and then got bought. But this is Nolan. He has ideas. Yeah. He's thinking about stuff, and so now he's slightly older than I am, and I don't know that he's starting companies anymore. But he can talk about the game business for sure. And Brent basically said, well, Dad did the game business, so I'm going to go do, immersive experiences. And find out if he thinks of them that way, if he uses that label. But, we met him. We met Brent. Brent pitched us on the 2-bit Circus before we invested in Meow Wolf. And we decided not to do it because we didn't see how
immersive experiences. You weren't in the immersive experience business. I mean, technically as a media person you are in the immersive experience, but it's a hard connection to make. I can make it, but yeah.
Brent's idea was that there was technology, that the thing would be networked together, and so you could keep track of people and see what they were accomplishing, so there'd be a leaderboard and stuff like that. So it was more like a game thing, but a physical. But we declined to invest. We didn't think it would work. And that was a number of years before I even heard about Meow Wolf, although Meow Wolf was going on at the same time, but as a collective.
Brilliant. So immersive experiences, man, I'm getting dragged into this idea of doing a treasure hunt, not dragged by anybody personally, but by my eccentricities. And I really like the digital analog world and having experiences in the digital world that also tie into digital's in real life. And it's such a big part of your thesis as well. If listeners are just tuning into this specific episode, haven't listened to previous ones, my dad and Jim Ward do a pitch on reality disturbance, and reality is going to get disturbed, and we've got about 20 minutes left. What is the latest on your philosophical understanding about where this is all headed for reality disturbance? Where are we going? Have you learned anything new since we haven't talked about reality disturbance in a while?
Not really. I mean, we're taking pitches 3 or 4 a week from people that are proposing to do this or that to disturb our reality. And meanwhile, we actually are also developing a company, but we need to find somebody to start it that'll be in that domain. And so I think that was maybe 6 months ago. So I can't paint a broad picture, except that we are moving towards what we know that is going to happen, right? The whole pitch we made is because we've been doing this for a long time. We know that we know what's going to happen next. And
how does AI fit into it? What do you think about AI in this? Like LLM, there's LLMs, there's other forms of AI. We have physical AI. An LLM is text-based, but it's also getting very multimodal very quickly. For those who aren't AI nerds, multimodal means the LLM can see, hear, sense, smell. Do you know trucks can smell now? Are you aware that trucks can smell? They've given the ability to trucks to smell for some reason. I think it's probably have to do with food safety. And then the other crazy thing, I put it in that AI whispers high signal thing. Amazon can their new one-armed levers that are going to destroy millions of jobs can feel.
Right.
They can feel, and that's somehow important to the moving of boxes in AI warehouses.
I mean, touch, feel, not emotional feel.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting philosophical point. You're not
going to have robots that have emotions, but they can touch and sense things.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Oh, sorry. It happens. So where were you headed with that?
Touch, sense, AI. How AI is going to disturb our reality if it has the senses.
Well, you sent me the thing about the hell's a robotic company from China.
Yeah.
That it wants to go public and just raise money at like a $70 billion valuation and use something. Anyway, if you go forward and say, okay, all this physical LLM stuff, you teach robots to touch and move and see in 3D and all the skills that we have that will be paired with robots. And, I have a hard time doing this because I think it's bullshit, but there's everybody's imagination is going wild, that, we'll have these super automated environments, where, we can be digital or we can be real and we go back and forth. And that's really what we're talking about. So AI is integral to that, but we're not proposing to invest in LLMs because that's a very well-developed, foundational models is I think most people would agree, very well-developed set of companies that are banging on that, with some new ones like Murati's picking machines and other new ones that are doing something, not sure exactly what it is they're doing that's different. And we're not going to invest in that stuff, right? But any of the companies that we invest in need to understand how to implement AI and how to turn it to. So AI becomes part of the proposition, right? It's not differentiating. You have to have AI. So what is it that you're doing that's different?
So you just sparked me to answer a question that's been in the back of my mind. The Chinese company that is doing robotics that is going to IPO is called Unitree Robotics. They're based in Hangzhou. I thought they were going to IPO in the United States, which goes back to what I was talking about, the financial markets, United States. They're IPOing in Shanghai's STAR market with a target valuation of $7 billion. And $7 billion.
Okay.
And historically, from 1991 to 2021, 7% of IPOs by Chinese companies occurred in the United States. In that same period, 22% happened in Hong Kong. We need to do an episode about the role of Hong Kong in the history of technology. So that's really interesting to me because that pokes a hole in my thought train about Chinese companies, because the U.S. is basically probably not allowing. Well, do you know anything about this? Is the U.S. allowing Chinese companies to IPO in the U.S.? What's going on there?
The regulations have been tightened around how companies go public. That very few companies are going public in the U.S. anyway.
Yeah, interesting.
So if you're a Chinese company going public on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, the scrutiny is pretty much overwhelming and nobody wants to do it, right? There's other ways they can get public. So it's not happening. It's not like they're not allowed, but the sort of money regulations and stuff like that make it really difficult for a Chinese company. It's hard enough for any non-U.S. company to go public. on the New York Exchange. Usually it happens after they're already public somewhere else or pretty mature. China is developing its own entrepreneurial ecosystem, all the way from venture capital through the founding, growth, and eventually.
But they're trying to control it.
Well, it's a communist country and it's centrally controlled. So even Hong Kong is problematic because there is some risk that it won't be, it's called an SAR, specially administered region, which means it's not actually part of China, but it is owned by China, by the PRC. And Tibet's also a specially administered region. We should do this Hong Kong thing when I'm in Hong Kong, because that's where I'm headed in 2 weeks. And we'll have to talk about scheduling because anyway, so I've learned I don't need a visa to go to Hong Kong. In fact, I think I've learned that you don't need a visa to go to China as an American. Usually, my past is I did need a visa. I needed a page in my passport that had a thing in Chinese and was signed and authorized. And it would be like a 3-year visa, something like that. But I'm not sure. But anyway, so when you're looking at it for sort of an economic financial model, China has all of the resources it needs to exist separately without depending on the U.S. And the U.S. too, and they're the only two countries that really have that level of, and that's get worried about China because it's run by a dictator or a centralized communist party, whatever you want to call it, and who's manipulating the system to their advantage and wildly subsidizing new industries, which turned out to be work. So whatever the system is, and it's not well understood. China, the PRC, the People's Republic of China, is a relatively weak national organization. There's a lot of power resides in the major cities, in Shanghai or all the others, and the mayors have a lot of power there, and they have a lot of money. And I don't know how they get it, right? I don't know how the tax system works there, how it works, but so the Unitree, and I think you said it was Hangzhou, that town has purposely gone out and built it. And this is where I said China might be in trouble. They purposely incentivize people to establish certain businesses in their business district. It worked so well that now there's hundreds of them competing with each other, and there's this nasty price going on in everything. And so the guy that I knew that bought a Unitree and had it shipped to his house, I pinged him, and he sent me, I think I forwarded it to you, this thing about a involutionary, I can't remember what you call it, spiral, involutionary spiral. Let's see if I can.
Oh, no, I got it. I'm going to look it up. Yeah.
And I mean, that was a new idea I heard.
It brought up Madame Blavatsky, who you might not be aware of, but it's really funny that it did that.
So, yeah, this is a concept, actually, it looks like from medical. It has to do with pregnancies. And but if you put the word finance in there, an involution spiral in finance is self-defeating and inward rolling cycle of excessive competition that leads to diminishing returns. The term, originally a Chinese internet buzzword known as you pronounce it, has been increasingly used in economic commentary to describe the current state of China's economy because they're all just eating each other. Like, and so this guy was saying, well, this might happen in the robotics business too, because now everybody's doing it. So whatever the thing you figure, whatever it is, they're going to kill each other in the process. And maybe that's a really good process. You end up with the strong.
Well, how does that relate to monopolies? Because I recently found out, I listened to a strategy podcast with Intel, or a guy who was from the U.S. government, who's blah, 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 but worked at Intel. He said a very interesting thing, which only somebody who's been at high levels of the government would understand, which is that it's not illegal to be a monopoly. It's illegal to act like a monopoly. That's in the United States. What you just said is really interesting, because does China stop monopolies? Are they like the Teddy Roosevelt? Is China progressivism? Is like, yeah.
That's pushing it, but there is this issue which is spoken about publicly in China that of too much competition. Xi Jinping actually mentioned this in one of his speeches, that there's excessive competition, and I mean, you go, okay, we got like total competition. Anybody can do anything, and whatever happens. Hopefully, people don't actually kill each other in the process. But and then you have a managed economy, and neither extreme exists. Right? China depends on entrepreneurs to do new things, so they encourage it, but they don't want too much of it. We, in theory, let you do whatever you want according to rules, and we have rules. So they're just like points on the spectrum of how you can think about how to organize an economy. And the thing about Xi Jinping is he came into power and was elected, and has incrementally over a number of cycles and decades actually now, has taken away all of the pieces that were kind of open, and he can now tell people what to do. I mean, including he disappeared Jack Ma for
yeah.
He said, you can't do this. You can't be doing what you're doing. People are going like, well, what can we do? And he's going like, yeah, well, don't do that. And so now China is a centrally controlled economy with capitalist features inside that, and we're a capitalist society with socialist features.
Yeah,
it's like,
and what is going on? That is fascinating. It gave me a lot of ideas of how to use AI. I don't know if you've caught on to this yet, but AI is most interesting at its current form as an information gathering process. So I'm basically I'm coming up with questions. I just wrote a bunch of down. I'm going to later. I've got the spaced repetition system. So whatever question I write down, it's going to bring. I'm going to hear about it about four days later. And then when I see it, I go ask Claude to run a deep research. And that deep Claude or ChatGPT, doesn't matter which one, I do a deep research. Then it takes 20 to 50 minutes to do that deep research, and that's a pattern that's going to be much more interesting to track over, because it could take longer and longer for those things. Now, and then I do the deep research, but then I forget about the question. Then it comes back 10 days later, and then I have my answer with the deep research, and that's the information gathering. It can go dissect the Chinese market as long as all these sources are public, but it can do inference as well. So this is what Palantir does, is that it does inference. So you don't need to know the centrally sources. You can take 10,000 data points and an LLM can find it, which is crazy. Like that's a crazy thing that we're headed into. Talk about reality disturbance. Any thoughts there?
I have no idea what you're saying, so it's a little hard. It went over the edge on me, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned, and you can bring it full circle, you mentioned either before we got on or after we got on that there was a breach in the fire.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Let me try to bring that up.
That's a pretty interesting idea. I believe I did read about it briefly, and I closed the hole pretty quick. So
it killed the guy. It probably killed the guy. Probably killed the guy who allowed it to happen.
Anymore, but yeah, people disappear in China. It's like everybody's too scared to make a big deal out of it.
Wow.
Wall is a really interesting thing, and any kind of firewall you set up, if it's supposed to be 100% perfect, requires a lot of people. So I don't know. I wonder how many people work on the Great Firewall.
Well, I got some data here. So over 1,000 internal documents from a Chinese company, Xi Networks, has been published, exposing how censorship surveillance tools based on China's Great Firewall are being sold and deployed. So it's not only China, it's also Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Myanmar. So let me go back to the wall bleed vulnerability. A buffer overread in the DNS injection subsystem of the Great Firewall caused certain middle boxes to leak up to 125 bytes of internal memory when handling crafted DNS queries. That's Greek to me. You just talked about me being Greek to you. What do you understand that stuff?
Say it again. It crafted.
Buffer overread in the DNS injection subsystem.
But you said it crafted what?
Caused DNS queries, crafted DNS queries.
So in other words, somebody had to know how to ping that particular address in the DNS, the domain network system. System. So DNS is kind of how things get from here to there, bits in the internet, riding on top of all the other protocols. But so if you create a new website, you need to be registered in the domain name system so it knows where to take that URL and resolve it. So the Stack Overflow, I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes here, but there's a memory space, and if you don't manage the memory space well, too much data can be put into the memory, and some of it overflows. So if you can figure out which memory space is overflowing, you can get stuff out of it that lets you hack that system.
Whoa. So a lot of that was Greek to me. It was active between October 21 and March 2024. That is so crazy. I'm going to go research. We should talk about this while you're in Hong Kong, when you get back from Hong Kong. Yahoo is the one that reported it. Oh man, what a strange piece of news. Because what does it mean for the Great Firewall has been hacked? Like, I guess we just get more information about it.
Well, I mean, some information is leaked out, and hacking is something I'm still a little bit defied by.
Interesting.
There's sort of general hacking where you kind of poke at stuff and see what you can find out. Extremely well-defended systems like the Great Wall and our own .mil, you have to get up to a pretty sophisticated level to know how to do it, and there are people on the other side who are like watching out for you, and so that's pretty intense. That's why I say I wonder how many people work on the Great Wall, because the firewall, but because equivalent systems require a lot of people, and that AI maybe can do this, but the thing that AI has the hardest time with is new real-time changes. Right? LLMs reflect what was going on when the LLM was trained, and is always out of date. And so there are other systems that kind of keep real-time information in there, but that's kind of the leading edge of AI right now. But
okay, I'm gonna have a lot more questions on that by the next time we speak. So that feels like a good place to end. Thank you so much, and see you next week.